évacuation sous le feu d'artillerie lourde.
Not a modest bombardment than a night.
His name is Léo Major. He is 24 years old. 3 hours ago, his best friend was alive. The streets of Zwolle are empty. 50,000 Dutch civilians are behind shuttered windows. A German garrison holds the city. In 6 hours, Canadian artillery will flatten it, unless one soldier can make an entire army believe he is 1,000. This is the night a single private saved a city from its own liberation. Not with a regiment behind him, not with armor, not with air support, with a lie so loud an entire garrison believed it. But what it cost him started hours before he ever reached these streets. April 1945. The war in Europe had weeks left to live. Everyone knew it. The killing had not stopped. Across the Western Front, Allied armies pressed into the final pockets of German resistance. In Italy, the campaign ground toward surrender. In the East, the Soviets closed on Berlin. The outcome was no longer in doubt. But the dying continued. Canadian forces pushed northeast through the Netherlands. They liberated towns in sequence to Venter, Apeldoorn, then the road north. Zwolle sat 40 kilometers ahead, a city of 50,000 people, a provincial capital with medieval churches and narrow canals, the kind of city that looked beautiful in peacetime photographs. German Wehrmacht and Waffen-SS units held it. They had held it for 5 years. Le Régiment de la Chaudière reçoit leurs ordres. Take Zwolle. The method, artillery. Soften the city with a full barrage at dawn, then send infantry. It had worked before. It had also destroyed cities before. Caen had been leveled this way. Whole blocks were reduced to rubble before a single soldier crossed the start line. The math was simple, and ugly shells saved soldiers' lives but cost civilian ones. The commanding officer wanted intelligence first. He asked for 2 volunteers to scout the German positions overnight. The mission was reconnaissance, not combat. Find where the Germans are. Come back, let the guns do the rest. 2 men raised their hands. They had no intention of letting the guns do anything. The Netherlands in April 1945 was a country breaking open. In the south, cities had already been freed. Eindhoven, Nijmegen, the Scheldt estuary cleared at brutal cost. But the north remained under German occupation. The hunger winter had killed more than 20,000 Dutch civilians since the autumn of 1944. The Germans had cut food supplies to the occupied provinces. Rations fell below starvation level. Families ate tulip bulbs and sugar beets to survive. Mothers boiled potato peels into soup for their children. People walked for hours to farms outside the cities, trading wedding rings for bread. The elderly and the very young died first. Then everyone else. Every day the Germans held a city meant more dead civilians. Not from bullets, from hunger. The liberation was not coming fast enough, and the method of liberation carried its own cost. The people of Zwolle had survived 5 years of occupation. They did not deserve to die under the shells of the army coming to save them. Artillery bombardments freed cities by flattening them. What the Germans did not destroy, Allied guns often did. The commanders knew this. The soldiers knew it better. One of those soldiers had seen it too many times to accept it once more. To understand what Léo Major did at Zwolle, you have to understand what the war had already done to him. He was born in New Bedford, Massachusetts in 1921. His family moved to Montreal before his first birthday. He grew up in a working-class district during the Depression. Hard circumstances. A difficult father. The kind of childhood that either breaks a person or builds something stubborn inside them. In Major's case, it built something that the German army would spend 4 years trying to kill. He enlisted in 1940 at the age of 19. He joined Le Régiment de la Chaudière, a French-Canadian unit based in Quebec. He trained in New Brunswick. Then he trained in Scotland for 3 years. He became a scout and a sniper. He waited for the invasion that everyone knew was coming. It came on the 6th of June 1944. He landed on Juno Beach with the Chaudières as part of the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division. The surf was rough. The ramps went down. The men in front of him ran into machine gun fire. Major ran with them. On his first day in France, He and another scout spotted a German half-track, a Hanomag armored vehicle occupied by 3 soldiers. They attacked it. Major killed one, wounded the driver, and captured the vehicle. Inside it, they found German codes and military communications. His first day of combat, and he had already changed the intelligence picture for his unit. He was 23 years old. Most soldiers never fire their weapon in combat. Major captured an armored vehicle before lunch. Later that same day, he was sent on another reconnaissance mission. Days later, a phosphorus grenade exploded near his face. It destroyed 80% of the vision in his left eye. The army wanted to send him home. The major refused. His answer became part of the regiment's lore. "I'm a sniper," he told his commander. "I only need one eye." They let him stay. He fought through Normandy with an eye patch. He fought through Belgium. He fought through the Scheldt. The Battle of the Scheldt was one of the bloodiest campaigns in the Canadian advance. Flooded polders, dug-in defenders, casualties that mounted by the hour. During one reconnaissance mission, Major was sent to find a patrol of fresh recruits who had failed to return. He found them. He also found a German camp with roughly 100 soldiers. What happened next is difficult to believe, and yet the records confirm it. He captured 93 German prisoners by himself. Alone, not a platoon, not a squad. One man with a weapon and a voice that told 93 enemy soldiers their war was over. He marched them back to Canadian lines in a column. He was offered the Distinguished Conduct Medal for it. He allegedly refused because Field Marshal Montgomery was presenting it. Major did not respect the man enough to accept. That tells you something about Léo Major. Awards meant nothing to him. Rank meant nothing to him. He had been offered promotions and turned them down. He once said the sergeant does the officer's work without the credit. He did not care who approved of him. He cared about doing the thing in front of him. Later in the Rhineland, his vehicle hit a mine. It broke his back. They took him to a hospital in Nijmegen. He escaped. He climbed out of a hospital bed with a broken spine and walked away. He hid with a Dutch family in Nijmegen for nearly a month while his back slowly knit itself together. The family fed him. They gave him a bed. They did not ask questions. When he could stand without pain, he walked back to his regiment and asked for his rifle. His commanding officer should have sent him home. By now, everyone knew better than to try. By April 1945, Léo Major had been partially blinded, had broken his back, had been wounded multiple times, and had captured nearly 100 prisoners on his own. He was still fighting. The war could not finish him. But it had not finished trying. Wilfrid Arsenault went by Welly. He was a corporal. He was Léo Major's closest friend in the regiment. They had trained together in Scotland for 3 years before the invasion. They crossed the Channel together. They fought through France and the Low Countries together. In the kind of war that strips everything away, Welly Arsenault was the thing that remained. When the commanding officer asked for volunteers, they stepped forward together. The mission was simple. Scout the German positions around Zwolle. Make contact with the Dutch underground if possible. Return before dawn with intelligence for the guns. They left Canadian lines at 9:30 on the night of April 13. But Major and Arsenault had already made a private agreement. They did not want the city shelled. They had seen what artillery did to a town. The rubble where houses used to stand. The fires that burned for days. The bodies pulled from collapsed basements. The civilians who survived 5 years of occupation only to die under the shells meant to free them. Major had liberated towns across the Netherlands. He had walked through streets where the joy of freedom sat next to the wreckage of deliverance. He knew what an artillery barrage left behind. If there was any chance of taking Zwolle without the barrage, they intended to find it. 2 men walking into a garrison city in the dark with a plan no commanding officer had authorized. That plan assumed both of them would survive the walk-in. It was an assumption that had less than 3 hours left. They reached the outskirts of Zwolle before midnight. The city sat behind railroad tracks. Between the Canadian lines and those tracks, a Dutch farmhouse. The farm belonged to Hendrik van Journer. Van Journer brought the 2 Canadians inside. He gave them rough positions of German emplacements near the railway. He told them where the machine guns were likely to be. He told them where they were not. He did this knowing that if the Germans discovered he had helped, his family would pay. The penalty for aiding Allied soldiers was execution, not imprisonment, not interrogation, a bullet or a noose, and often the same for the family. Van Gournor did it anyway. His wife stood in the doorway and let 2 armed strangers into her home. Because after 5 years of occupation, that is what the Dutch underground did. They helped, and they accepted the cost. Every act of resistance was a bet that tomorrow would be different, that the soldiers walking through the dark would finish what they started. What Van Gournor could not tell them was how many Germans held the city. Between a scouting run and a death sentence, Major and Arsenault thanked the farmer. They moved toward the tracks. They never learned which estimate was right. Not together. Shortly after midnight, they reached the railroad tracks. A German machine gunner scattered the rest of the position. Then he stopped. His friend lay on the ground behind him. The reconnaissance mission was over. Protocol said return to Canadian lines. Report enemy contact. Let the artillery proceed. That was the correct decision. That was the decision any soldier in any army would be expected to make. Any commanding officer would have demanded it. A scout's job is to gather intelligence and return alive. Not to fight. Not to liberate. Go back. Report, let the big guns finish the job in the morning. Accept that Welly died doing what he volunteered to do. Accept that the artillery would handle the rest. Léo Major did not make the correct decision. He made his. What happened between midnight and dawn would become one of the most disputed, decorated, and remarkable solo actions of the entire war. But it started with grief. And it started with rage. He could have gone back. He had every reason to. A dead friend. One working eye. A broken back that had never fully healed. An entire garrison of unknown size between him and the city center. The artillery would fire at dawn regardless. No one expected him to do anything except survive the night. Welly Arsenault was dead on the ground behind him. The mission was finished. There was nothing left to prove to anyone. But Major had spent the last 10 months proving that what the army expected of him had nothing to do with what he intended. The question was no longer whether a single soldier could take a city. The question was whether a city of 50,000 people would survive until morning. And that answer now depended entirely on what one grieving, half-blind private did in the next 5 hours. Major entered Zwolle alone. 2 Sten guns. A sack of grenades. No plan except forward. His DCM citation records what came next in military language. The reality was louder. He attacked the first German guard post he found. Grenades through windows. Sten gun fire into the dark. He captured the first group 10 soldiers and marched them back to Canadian lines outside the city. Then he went back in. He did this again and again. Over the course of 4 hours, he attacked multiple German positions across the city. Each time the same method. Grenades, automatic fire. Then silence. Then movement to a new position. Then more grenades from a completely different direction. The sound of a force that did not exist. A running firefight creates a geography of sound. Explosions here. Automatic fire there. Silence in between that feels like movement. To a defending garrison listening from multiple positions, this pattern sounds like a coordinated attack from several directions. It sounds like a company, at minimum. Possibly a battalion. The Germans could not determine how many Canadians had entered Zwolle. The answer was 1. They did not believe the answer was 1. No rational commander would. No single soldier attacks a garrison city alone. The very absurdity of it was his greatest advantage. That disbelief was the weapon. Not the grenades. Not the Sten guns. The chaos itself. But chaos alone would not clear a garrison. For that, Major needed the city itself to help him. Somewhere in the dark streets, Major made contact with the Dutch resistance. His citation notes it plainly. He contacted the underground and formed patrols of local Dutch civilians. These were not soldiers. They were bakers and teachers and shopkeepers who had spent 5 years watching their city be occupied. They knew every alley, every German billet, every route the garrison would use if they tried to withdraw. They had been waiting for this night longer than Major had been fighting. Major positioned Dutch patrols at strategic points across Zwolle. He was building a net. The resistance on the inside, watching every German movement. The illusion of a Canadian army on the outside, built from noise and fire and nerve, and one man running between them, setting off explosions to hold the lie together. It should not have worked. It worked because desperation and audacity look identical from the receiving end. Then came the deception that broke the garrison's nerve. Major, with the resistance's help, convinced a German officer that the city was surrounded. Thousands of Canadian troops, he told them. A full assault at dawn. The officer had no way to verify it. Every explosion that night confirmed it. The German garrison did not know they were being fooled by a single soldier with a sack of grenades and a dead friend's name on his lips. But my Major was not finished. He needed the Germans to see fire. The Gestapo headquarters in Zwolle held files. Names of collaborators, names of resistance fighters, names of families who had hidden Jewish citizens from deportation. Every name in those files was a death sentence waiting to be carried out. If the Germans retreated in order, they would take those files. Or they would burn them themselves. Either way, the building had to go. Major sets it on fire. The flames rise above the rooftops. Every German soldier in Zwolle sees them. Every civilian behind shuttered windows sees the glow. The message is clear. The Canadians are here. The Canadians are burning the Gestapo. The Canadians are not leaving. Historians have debated who set the fire. Some researchers argue it fits the pattern of retreating Germans destroying their own files. Major Citation credits him directly. The Dutch memory of that night credits him. The fire burned regardless of who lit it. And the garrison saw it. By the early hours of April 14, German units began to withdraw. They move east, away from the fire, away from the Phantom Army. The occupation of Zwolle is ending. Not with an artillery barrage, not with a battalion assault, with one man's refusal to stop. But Léo Major is not finished yet. There is still something he left outside the city. Not every German unit withdrew quietly. Zwolle's garrison included Waffen-SS personnel. They were not conscripts. They were not looking for a way out. Somewhere in the final hours, Major encountered them. The Liberation Route Europe account records the confrontation directly. He killed 4 SS soldiers in the firefight that followed. He was alone. One eye, 2 Sten guns running low on ammunition. Dawn is approaching. The sky is already turning gray at the edges. A body count he would never speak about after the war. The SS did not know they were fighting one man. They thought they were fighting a Canadian assault force. Every grenade Major had thrown for 4 hours had built that illusion. Every burst of automatic fire from a different street corner confirmed it. The deception held because the noise never stopped long enough for anyone to count the source. After the SS engagement, the last organized resistance in Zwolle collapsed. Units that had been holding positions began pulling east. The Phantom Army had won, but there was one task left that had nothing to do with war, and it mattered more to Major than anything he had done that night. At 4 in the morning, Major reached a canal on the city's edge. He had been fighting for 6 hours. He was soaked. He was exhausted. His ammunition was nearly gone. The citation describes him in 2 words, wet and tired. He waded across. On the other side of that canal lay the body of Corporal Wilfrid Arsenault, where Major had left him hours earlier, where the machine gun had put him down. Major picked up his friend's body. He carried Welly back, across the canal, through the water, through the city he had just taken, back to the Canadian lines. He did not leave him in the dark. That detail is not in every version of the story. It is in the citation. It is the detail that tells you who Léo Major was, not the grenades, not the captured prisoners, not the burning building. The walk back across the canal with a dead friend across his shoulders, through cold water, in the dark, after 6 hours of fighting alone. He could have left the body until morning. No one would have blamed him. No one would have known. He would have known. That is who he was. Major reached Canadian lines at 9 o'clock on the morning of April 14. He reported the city liberated. His commanding officer canceled the artillery barrage. The Régiment de la Chaudière entered Zwolle unopposed. No shells fell. No buildings collapsed. No civilians died under friendly fire. 50,000 people woke up free. They came out of their houses and saw Canadian soldiers in their streets. Flags appeared on buildings, orange pennants and Dutch tricolors that had been hidden in attics for 5 years. Children ran alongside the trucks. Women pressed flowers into soldiers' hands. Old men stood in doorways and wept. The war was over in Zwolle, and the city was still standing. Every church, every bridge, every house where a family had spent the night listening to grenades and gunfire and wondering if the morning would bring liberation or rubble, it brought liberation. And the city was whole. The historical record is not perfectly clean. The 7th Reconnaissance Regiment reported patrols entering Zwolle as early as the evening of April 13. The Régiment rifles also sent patrols the following morning. Dutch resistance fighters from Almelo entered the city without encountering Canadians. Who arrived first remains debated. Multiple regiments have claimed the liberation. The record holds ambiguity, and honest history must say so. War is not a clean narrative. Multiple units converge on the same objective. Timelines overlap. Memory reshapes itself in the retelling. The truth of April 14, 1945, is that several forces contributed to the liberation of Zwolle. No honest account can say otherwise. But Zwolle's own civic memory has answered the question. The city remembers Léo Major, not a regiment, not an artillery battery, a man. What the city could not know was how completely that man would disappear into silence. Léo Major went home to Montreal. He became a pipe fitter. He married Pauline de Croissel. They raised 4 children together. He went to work every morning. He came home every evening. He lived the kind of life that does not make headlines. Quiet years. A house on the south shore of Montreal. The kind of man who fixed your pipes and never told you he had liberated a city. He never told his family what happened at Zwolle. Not his wife. Not his children. Not once. For 30 years, the liberation of a city lived inside one man's silence. Then, one day in the mid-1970s, a Dutch official arrived at their Montreal home. He spoke of Major's heroism to his family. His son, Daniel Aim, was 9 years old. He heard a stranger describe his father as the liberator of a city across an ocean, a city that still remembered his name. When Pauline asked why he had never mentioned it, Major gave his answer. I didn't think anyone would believe me. Zwolle never stopped believing. The Army awarded Major the Distinguished Conduct Medal for Zwolle. This time, he accepted it. It was the second highest decoration for gallantry in the British Commonwealth. The citation language is spare. Military prose does not reach for emotion. It does not need to. The facts carry everything. 5 years later, the Korean War began. The Major volunteered again. One ruined eye, a spine that had been broken by a mine in the Rhineland. He was 29 years old and had already survived more than most soldiers endure in a career. He went anyway. In November 1951, he led 18 scouts in a midnight assault on Hill 355. Major took the hill and held it for 3 days. He directed mortar fire by radio so close to his own position that his bombs were falling on him. The commander of the mortar platoon later said that Major asked him to bring the barrage closer. The shells were already landing on top of him. He wanted them closer. He refused to retreat. He and his men held Hill 355 for 3 days until the American 3rd Infantry Division relieved them. He received a second DCM, the only Canadian to earn it in 2 separate wars, one of only 3 soldiers in the entire British Commonwealth to achieve it. After Korea, he went home for good. He picked up a wrench and went back to fitting pipes. He told no one what he had done. In 2005, 60 years after the night at the railroad tracks, Zwolle made Major an honorary citizen. He was 84 years old. The city named a street after him, Léo Major. The sign reads, Canadian First Liberator of Zwolle, 1921-2008. They teach his story in local schools. The mayor, Léo Major, called him a symbol of their freedom. He said that the most important thing was for children to understand that freedom is not guaranteed, that it is fragile, that someone once walked into the dark alone to protect it. Major died on October 12, 2008, in Longueuil, Quebec. He was 87. Bone cancer. Dutch dignitaries attended his funeral. The mayor of Zwolle flew across the Atlantic for a pipe fitter from Montreal. That tells you what kind of man he was, not because of what the mayor did, because of what Major never asked for. He was buried at the National Field of Honor in Pointe Claire. He remains the only Canadian to have received the Distinguished Conduct Medal twice for 2 separate wars. The first, for the night at Zwolle. The second, for leading 18 scouts to capture Hill 355 in Korea in 1951. He volunteered for Korea despite a ruined eye and a broken back. The war could never finish him. Not the grenade that took his eye, not the mine that broke his back, not the machine gun that killed his friend, not the garrison that should have killed him. He finished on his own terms. When Major died, a 14-year-old boy in Zwolle wrote in an online book of condolences. He said that Léo Major was the first Canadian soldier he saw on April 14, 1945. He said that Major's appearance was the beginning of a new life for all of them. The boy was 83 years old when he wrote those words. He had never forgotten the man who walked out of the dark. In 2018, Dutch football fans at a FC Zwolle match unfurled a banner across the stands. It read, "Sole Savior of Zwolle, 73 years after the war. An ocean away from the cemetery where he was buried. They still knew his name." In 2020, Canada Post issued a stamp in his honor. It marked the 75th anniversary of victory in Europe. A bronze bust of Major stands in Zwolle today. He is in uniform, a rifle in his hand, his face turned toward the city he freed. He looks like a man who is not finished yet. There is a monument to Corporal Wilfrid Arsenault in Zwolle as well. The city did not forget him either. The 2 men who walked into the dark together are remembered together. One in bronze, one in stone, both by name. Stories like this one survive because someone passes them forward. If this story reached you tonight, carry it one step further. Subscribe if you want to be here the next time a forgotten name finds its voice. Share it with someone who should hear it. And leave a word below because the people who built this channel are listening. A man walks through a city he does not know. He carries 2 Sten guns. A sack of grenades hangs from his shoulder. He has 1 working eye. He has no orders. He has no plan. He has a dead friend behind him and a living city in front of him. And behind him, across a canal, in the dark, his friend is waiting. He went back for him.